Chances are that when you've been through a trial in life, you've asked God for a whole bunch of things. God, give me patience. God, give me strength. God, get me out of here. But there's one thing in particular you should ask God to give you when you're going through a trial. And if you haven't been asking God for this, you're missing out. Let's talk about it. Hey there, everybody. I'm Mario Escobedo. Thanks for checking out Equipped. This is a channel dedicated to adding value to your spiritual growth. If you haven't had a chance, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you're always up to date when I post a new Bible study. Trials, difficulties, hard times in life. We all have them. We all go through them. We've all been through them. And even though they look very different for all of us, there's one thing that they have in common, and that is that they can be very frustrating for all of us. And that frustration leads us to ask God for different things. But there's one thing in particular you should be asking God anytime you go through a trial. And I'm basing this teaching on James chapter 1, verses 2 through 12, and I'm zeroing in on verse 5. Now let me give you just a little bit of context. In this chapter, James is talking about trials, and he pretty much lets us know that trials are inevitable. However, James tells us that the reason we go through trials is to produce perseverance, growth, and spiritual maturity in all of us. Now, James tells us that we should consider ourselves fortunate. We should be blessed and happy when we're going through a trial. And not only that, he tells us that as you're going through the trial, perseverance will be produced in you, so be happy about it. So what do you do when you know you're supposed to feel blessed or happy when you're going through a trial, and when you know that you want perseverance to be produced in you, but you're not really sure how to go about doing it, especially when you're right in the middle of the trial? Well, the good thing is that James provides an answer in chapter 1, verse 5. He says the following: "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." So notice what James's advice to us is. If you're going through a trial and you know you want to be joyful in the trial, and you know you want to persevere in the trial, but you don't know how to do that, ask God for wisdom. And so that brings me to the big idea of this teaching. When you're going through a trial, the best thing to do is to ask God for wisdom. Now notice what James says is God's response to your request for wisdom. Number one, he says, God gives generously. Now when I read that, here's what I picture in my mind. I picture God with this huge shovel. I don't know why, but I just picture him with a shovel. And there's this large pile of wisdom right there next to him. And so when God hears my request for wisdom, he gets his shovel, goes to that big mound of wisdom, and he starts giving me shovelful after shovelful of wisdom. God gives you wisdom generously when you ask for it when you're going through a trial. But that's not the only thing James says. He says that God gives wisdom generously, but also without finding fault in anybody. Here's what I think that means. God doesn't get upset with you when you ask him for wisdom. It's not as if God hears your request for wisdom and says, "Again? Seriously? Really? I just gave you some wisdom last month. I just gave you some wisdom last week, and you're here asking me for wisdom again? Really?" No, that's not God's response at all. He doesn't get mad or upset with you when you ask him for wisdom. In fact, the way I see it, it honors God when you ask him for wisdom. You're acknowledging that you can't make it through this trial in your own limited wisdom and knowledge, and that you need his wisdom in order to make it through this trial. For that reason, God gives wisdom generously and without finding fault. Knowing that God gives wisdom generously and without finding fault, for me at least, is a huge comfort. It lets me know that when I'm going through a trial, God is on my side. Not only that, but if I ask, he's going to give me anything and everything I need to get me through that trial. God isn't going to go through the trial for me, but he is going to make sure that I'm sufficiently equipped to make it through the trial. See what I did there? I threw the name of the channel into the teaching. It's subliminal messaging. It's such an encouragement for me to know that God wants me to make it through this trial, and that he's going to give me what I need in order for that to happen. Now, why do I need wisdom to make it through a trial? Because God's wisdom is what I need. It's the stuff that God gives me in order to make good choices and right decisions. That's basically what I need to make it through a trial. So if you're currently going through a trial, or for when you face a trial sometime in the future, remember this: When you're going through a trial, the best thing to do is to ask God for wisdom. Ask in faith, believing that God wants to and can give you the wisdom that you need to make it through this trial. Remember that God is on your side when you're going through this trial. He's not rooting against you, He's rooting for you. He wants you to make it through this trial, and He's going to give you everything you need for that to happen if you will only ask. I hope this added value to your spiritual growth. If it did, I certainly would appreciate a like, a comment, and definitely having you share this with others. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you're always up to date. I post a new Bible study the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.